Welcome to Umbrella Rebellion. I'm Marcy.
And I'm Dee.
We are finding healing after leaving a cult.
We will be discussing abuse and personal experience with the ATI, IBLP, and fundamental churches.
Trigger warning. This podcast may contain descriptions of various forms of abuse. Please take care for your safety and well-being while you are listening.
If the content becomes too much for you to handle, please turn this off. We hope to expose harmful teachings that lead to and justify abuse,
with the hope that those that are experiencing abuse can find support and escape from it.
Wow, welcome back to Colton Book Club. I know it is Saturday afternoon and a lot of people might not be able to make it, but this time that I have that I can dedicate to being online. Maybe one day I'll be able to get back to doing all these work at this thing. But you can always watch the replay. It's fine. So maybe I'll just a few more minutes to see if anybody wants to join us today. A really quite eventful things this week. And a little late getting on to the walk. I'm the grandson here with us. So, kind of crazy. But we are going to be reading about Pieces 4. I've already read through part 1. We are start on part 2. Just didn't start with chapter 4. I have a playlist up after this podcast. You can play with. After I finish reading a little bit, if there's anybody here that wants to have a discussion or talk about the book or any trauma recovery stuff, we can go to. I am going to just jump in right now. Start by Pieces 4, Part 2. If you would like to follow along with the book. Alrighty, let's just jump into it. Part 2. This is your brain on trauma. A little familiar for those of us that are Gen X. Chapter 4. Running for Your Life. The Anatomy of Survival. Prior to the advent of brain, there was no color and no sounds in the universe, nor was there any flavor or aroma, and probably little sense and no feeling or emotion. Before brain, the universe was also free of pain and anxiety. Roger Spirit. On September 11th, 2001, 5-year-old Noam Saul witnessed the first passenger plane slam into the World Trade Center from the windows of his first grade classroom at PS 234, less than 1,500 feet away. He and his classmates ran with their teacher down the stairs to the lobby, where most of them were reunited with parents who had dropped them off at school just moments earlier. Noam, his older brother, and their dad were 3 of the tens of thousands of people who ran for their lives through the rubble, ash, and smoke of lower Manhattan that morning. 10 days later, I visited his family, who are friends of mine, and that evening, his parents and I went for a walk in eerie darkness through the still smoking pit where Tower 1 once stood, making our way among the rescue crews who were working around the clock under the blazing applied light. When we returned home, Gnome was still awake, and he showed me a picture that he had drawn at 9 a.m. on September 12th. The drawing depicted what he had seen the day before, an airplane slamming into the tower, a ball of fire, firefighters, and people jumping from the tower's window. But at the bottom of the picture, he had drawn something else, a black circle at the foot of the building. I had no idea what it was, so I asked him. Trampoline? He replied. What was a trampoline doing there? Gnome explained. So that the next time when people have to jump, they will be safe. I was stunned. This 5-year-old boy, a witness to unspeakable making disasters just 24 hours before, he made that drawing. He had used his imagination to process what he had seen and began to go on with his life. Gnome was fortunate. His entire family was unharmed. He had grown up surrounded by love, and he was able to grasp that the tragedies they had witnessed had come to an end. During disasters, young children usually take their cues from their parents. As long as their caregivers remain calm and responsive to their needs, they often survive terrible incidents without serious psychological cost. I have a question. Do you someone who went through Hurricane Katrina and how it affected different people different ways, and trying to keep calm for the little ones was very important. They have a picture of 5-year-old Gnome's drawing, and underneath the picture it says, 5-year-old Gnome's drawing made after he witnessed the World Trade Center attack on 9/11. He reproduced the image that haunted so many survivors. People jumping to escape from the inferno, but with a life-saving addition, a trampoline at the bottom of the collapsing slopes. The Gnome's experience allows us to see and outline two critical aspects of the adaptive response to threat that is basic to human survival. Thank you for the light. At the time the disaster occurred, he was able to take an active role by running away from it, thus becoming an agent in his own rescue. And once he had reached the safety of home, the alarm bells in his brain and body quieted. This freed his mind to make some sense of what had happened and even to imagine a creative alternative to what he had seen, a life-saving fantasy. Thank you so much. Thank you for starting me. Appreciate that. In contrast to Gnome, traumatized people become stopped in their growth because they can't integrate new experiences into their lives. I was very moved when the veterans of Patton's Army gave me a World War II Army issue watch prescription. But it was a sad memento of the year their lives had practically stopped, 1944. Being traumatized means continuing to organize your life as if the trauma was still going on, unchanged and immutable, as every new encounter of event is contaminated by the past. The next page has a drawing of a body and a brain and the pituitary gland, and then arrows to different parts of the body that I guess affects. So I'm going to read the description. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Hannah. Appreciate that so much. And underneath the picture, it says trauma affects the entire human organism, body, mind, and brain. In PTSD, the body continues to defend against a threat that belongs to the past. Healing from PTSD means being able to terminate this continued stress, mobilization, and restore the entire organism to safety. So, the body keeps score every Saturday at 2 p.m. Oh, thank you so much, Tommy. That's amazing. So yeah, every Saturday at 2 p.m. I'll read a portion, and after I read, we discuss if anybody would like to, or just talk about, where we're at in our lives. After trauma, the world is experienced with a different nervous system. The survivor's energy now becomes focused on suppressing inner chaos at the expense of spontaneous involvement in their lives. These attempts to maintain control over unbearable physiological reactions can result in a whole range of physical symptoms, including fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and other autoimmune diseases. This explains why it is critical for trauma treatment to engage the entire organism, body, mind, and brain. Okay, cool. Let me follow these because I'm definitely interested in reading more books. the whole the whole reason I started this is because I have a really hard time sitting down to read stuff, and I figured if I had a consistent day to do it, and I was reading it for others, then I would actually get the read. Organized to survive. This illustration on page 53 shows the whole body response to threat. When the brain's alarm system is turned on, it automatically triggers pre-programmed physical escape plans in the oldest parts of the brain. As in other animals, the nerves and chemicals that make up our basic brain structures have a direct connection with our body. When the old brain takes over, it partially shuts down the higher brain, our conscious mind, and propels the body to run, hide, fight, or on occasion freeze. By the time we are fully aware of our situation, our body may already be on the move. If the fight, flight, freeze response is successful and we escape the danger, we recover our internal equilibrium and gradually regain our sense. And then they have a photo of 9/11 and people running away from the slope. Next page has a photo of people in a plane on top. Looks like it might be a metaphor, but let's read what this is. Effective action versus mobilization. Effective action. Oh, it's the flight or the freeze in picture form. Got it. Effective action, the result of fight, flight, ends the threat. The mobilization keeps the body in a state of inescapable shock and learned helplessness. Faced with danger, people automatically secrete stress hormones to fuel resistance or escape. Brain and body are programmed to run for home, where safety can be restored and stress hormones can come to rest. In these strapped down men who are being evacuated far from home after Hurricane Katrina, stress hormone levels remain elevated and are turned against the survivor, stimulating ongoing fear, depression, rage, and physical disease. If for some reason the normal response is blocked, for example, when people are held down, trapped, or otherwise prevented from taking effective action, be it in a war zone, a car accident, domestic TV, or freight, the brain keeps secreting stress chemicals, and the brain's electrical circuits continue to fire in vain. Long after the actual event has passed, the brain may keep sending signals to the body to escape a threat that no longer exists. Since at least 1889, when the French psychologist Pierre Janet published the first scientific account of traumatic stress, it has been recognized that trauma survivors are prone to continue the action, or rather the futile attempts at action, which began when the thing happened. Being able to move and do something to protect oneself is a critical factor in determining whether or not a horrible experience will leave long-lasting scars. In this chapter, I'm going to go deeper into the brain's response to trauma. The more neuroscience discovers about the brain, the more we realize that it is a vast network of interconnected parts organized to help us survive and flourish. Knowing how these parts work together is essential to understanding how trauma affects every part of the human organism and can survive as an indispensable guide to resolving somatic stress. The brain from bottom to top. The most important job of the brain is to ensure our survival, even under the most miserable conditions. Everything else is secondary. In order to do that, brains need to, one, generate internal signals that register what our bodies need, such as food, rest, protection, snacks, and shelter. Two, create a map of the world to point us where to go to satisfy those needs. Three, generate the necessary energy and action to get us there. Four, warn us of danger and opportunities along the way. And five, adjust our actions based on the requirements of the movement, of the moment. And since we human beings are mammals, creatures that can only survive and thrive in groups, all of these imperatives require coordination and collaboration. Psychological problems occur when our internal signals don't work, when our maps don't lead us where we need to go, when we are too paralyzed to move, when our actions do not correspond to our needs, or when our relationships break down. Every brain structure that I discussed has a role to play in these essential functions. And as we will see, trauma can interfere with every one of them. Our rational cognitive brain is actually the youngest part of the brain and occupies only about 30% of the area inside our skull. The rational brain is primarily concerned with the world outside us, understanding how things to keep it work and figuring out how to accomplish our goals, manage our time, and sequence our actions. Beneath the rational brain lie two evolutionary older and to some degree separate brains which are in charge of everything else. The moment by moment registration and management of our body's physiology and the identification of comfort, safety, threat, hunger, fatigue, desire, longing, excitement, pleasure, and pain. The brain is built from the bottom up. It develops level by level within every child in the womb, just as it did in the course of evolution. The most primitive part, the part that is already online when we are born, is an ancient animal brain, often called the reptilian brain. It is located in the brainstem, just above the place where our spinal cord enters the skull. The reptilian brain is responsible for all the things that newborn babies can do: eat, sleep, wake, cry, breathe, feel temperature, hunger, wetness, and pain, and rid the body of toxins by urinating in deficits. The brainstem and the hypothalamus, which sits directly above it, together control the energy level of the body. They coordinate the functions of the heart and the lungs, and also the endocrine and immune systems, ensuring that basic life-sustaining systems are maintained within the relatively stable internal balance known as homeostasis. Breathing, eating, sleeping, pooping, and peeing are so fundamental that their significance is easily neglected when we consider complexities of mind and behavior. However, if your sleep is disturbed or your bowels don't work, or if you always feel hungry, or if being touched makes you want to scream, as is often the case with traumatized children and adults, the entire organism is thrown into this equilibrium. It is amazing how many psychological problems involve difficulties with sleep, appetite, touch, digestion, and arousal. Any effective treatment for trauma has to address these basic Any effective treatment for trauma has to address these basic housekeeping functions of the body. Right above the reptilian brain is the limbic system. It is also known as the mammalian brain because all animals that live in groups and nurture their young possess one. Development of this part of the brain truly takes off after a baby is born. It is the seat of the emotions, the monitor of danger, the judge of what is pleasurable or scary, arbiter of what is or is not important for survival purposes. It is also a central command post for coping with the challenges of living within our complex social networks. The limbic system is shaped in response to experience. in partnership with the infant's own genetic makeup and inborn temperament. As all parents of more than one child quickly notice, babies differ from birth in the intensity and nature of their reactions to similar events. Whatever happens to a baby contributes to the emotional and perceptual map of the world that its developing brain creates. As my colleague Bruce Perry explains it, the brain is formed in an use-dependent manner. This is another way of describing neuroplasticity, the relatively recent discovery that neurons that fire together wire together. When a circuit fires repeatedly, it can become a default set, the response most likely to occur. If you feel safe and loved, your brain becomes specialized in exploration, play, and cooperation. If you are frightened and unwanted, it specializes in managing feelings of fear and abandonment. As infants and toddlers, we learn about the world by moving, grabbing, and crawling, and by discovering what happens when we cry, smile, or protest. We are constantly experimenting with our surroundings. How do our interactions change the way our bodies feel? Attend any 2-year-old birthday party and notice how little Kimberly will engage you, play with you, flirt with you without any need for language. I don't like that. Flirt with you. I don't think the 2-year-olds understand playing. Weird. These early explorations shape the limbic structures devoted to emotions and memory. But these structures can also be significantly modified by later experiences, for the better by a close friendship or a beautiful first love, for example, or for the worse by a violent assault, relentless bullying, or neglect. Really weird. I didn't like that. Interesting. And then also, I'm thinking, like, as I'm reading that, there's something that I need to write down to sucks with these birds. Because if I don't write it down, I will forget. There was a significant thing that happened when I was a Simpson that affected, yes, it may have affected the ways that I attached to him on delving into that. I'm gonna go back real quick and use that for future discussion. Family drama. Okay. 2000. Uh, yep, 2014. So his beginnings were back after the Vietnam War, and that's kind of when he started studying all of this stuff. And with this, I guess, kind of going in almost a chronological timeline of like where he finished with his studies on trauma and how it affects the brain. That I can tell at this point. Okay. So where were we? Taken together, the reptilian brain and the limbic system make up what I'll call the emotional brain throughout this book. The emotional brain is at the heart of the central nervous system, and its key task is to look out for your welfare. If it detects danger or a special opportunity, such as promising a partner, it alerts you by releasing a spurt of hormones. That's weird way to say that. The resulting visceral sensations, ranging from mild queasiness to the grips of panic in your chest, will interfere with whatever your mind is currently focused on and get you moving, physically and mentally, in a different direction. Even at their most subtle, these sensations have a huge influence on the small and large decisions we make throughout our lives. What we choose to eat, where we like to sleep and with whom, what music we prefer, whether we like to garden or sing in a choir, and whom we befriend and whom we dislike. The emotional brain's cellular organization and biochemistry are simpler than those of the neurocortex, our rational brain, and it assesses incoming information in a more global way. As a result, it jumps to conclusions based on rough similarities. In contrast with the rational brain, which is organized to sort through a complex set of options, the textbook example is leaping back in terror when you see a snake, only to realize that it's just a coiled rope. The emotional brain initiates pre-programmed escape points, like fight or flight responses. These muscular and physiological reactions are automatic, set in motion without any thought or planning on our part, leaving our conscious, rational capacities to catch up later, often well after the threat is over. That's interesting. I love how the way that he describes this, like normal human behavior, like through the scientific lens. I love learning about that. That makes me understand myself better, in my opinion. But yeah, it would be my opinion because it's about me. Finally, we reach the top layer of the brain, the neocortex. We share this outer layer with other mammals, but it is much thicker in us humans. In the second year of life, the frontal lobes, which make up the bulk of our neocortex, began to develop at a rapid pace. The ancient philosophers called 7 years the age of reason. For us, first grade is the prelude of things to come, a life organized around frontal lobe capacity, sitting still, keeping sphincters in check, being able to use words rather than act out, understanding abstract and symbolic ideas, planning for tomorrow, and being in tune with teachers and classmates. The frontal lobes are responsible for the qualities that make us unique within the animal kingdom. They enable us to use language and abstract thought. They give us our ability to absorb and integrate vast amounts of information and attach meaning to it. Despite our excitement about linguistic speech of chimpanzees and rhesus monkeys, only human beings command the words and symbols necessary to create the communal, spiritual, and historical context that shape our lives. The frontal lobes allow us to plan and reflect, to imagine and play out future scenarios. They help us predict what will happen if we take one action, like applying for a new job or neglect another, not paying the rent. They make choice possible and underlie our astonishing creativity. Generations of frontal lobes working in close collaboration have created culture, which got us from dug-out canoes, horse-drawn carriages, and letters to jet planes, hybrid cars, and email. They also gave us known life-saving. Mirroring each other. Can't speak. Mirroring each other. Interpersonal neurobiology. Crucial for understanding trauma, the frontal lobes are also the seat of empathy, our ability to feel into someone else. One of the truly sensational discoveries of modern neuroscience took place in 1994 when, in a lucky accident, a group of Italian scientists identified specialized cells in the cortex that came to be known as mirror neurons. The researchers had attached electrodes to individual neurons in a monkey's premotor area, then set up a computer to monitor precisely which neurons fired when the monkey picked up a peanut or cracked a banana. At one point, an experimenter was putting food pellets into a box when he looked up at the computer. The monkey's brain cells were firing at the exact location where the motor command neurons were located. But the monkey wasn't eating or moving. He was watching the researcher, and his brain was vicariously mirroring the researcher's actions. Numerous other experiments followed around the world, and it soon became clear that mirror neurons explain many previously unexplainable aspects of the mind, such as empathy, imitation, synchrony, and even the development of language. One writer compared mirror neurons to neural Wi-Fi. We pick up not only another person's movement, but her emotional states and intentions as well. When people are in sync with each other, they tend to stand or sit in similar ways, and their voices take on the same rhythm. But our mirror neurons also make us vulnerable to others' negativities, so that we respond to their anger with fury or are dragged down by their depression. I'll have more to say about mirror neurons later in this book, because trauma almost invariably involves not being seen, not being mirrored, and not being taken into account. And also, it's interesting when you think about the Kolk aspect of things and how mirror neurons might play a role in it. Interesting. Treatment needs to reactivate this. Treatment needs to reactivate the capacity to safely mirror and be mirrored by others, but also to resist being hijacked by others' negative emotions. Prefrontal cortex. This is brain is not firing on all cylinders today. It has a brain and it's like partitioned out and like it slices different areas, and then they have its arrows pointing towards the prefrontal cortex, planning and anticipating sense of time and context, inhibitions of inappropriate actions, empathetic understanding. Then they have line going towards the limbic brain, map of relation between the organism and surrounding emotional relevance, categorization, perception. Then they have arrow going to brainstem, basic housekeeping, arousal, sleep, wake, hunger, satiation, breathing, chemical balance. The triune, three-part brain. The brain develops from the bottom up. The reptilian brain develops in the womb and organizes basic life-sustaining functions. It is highly responsive to threat throughout our entire lifespan. The limbic system is organized mainly during the first 6 years of life, but continues to evolve in a use-dependent manner. Trauma can have a major impact on its functioning throughout life. The prefrontal cortex develops last and also is affected by trauma exposure, including being unable to filter out irrelevant information. Throughout life, it is vulnerable to get offline in response to threat. As anybody who has worked with brain damaged people or taking care of demented parents has learned the hard way, well-functioning frontal lobes are crucial for harmonious relationship with our fellow humans. Realizing that other people can think and feel differently from us is a huge developmental step for Realizing that other people can think and feel differently from us is a huge developmental step for 2 and 3-year-olds. They learn to understand others' motives so they can adapt and stay safe in groups that have different perceptions, expectations, and values. Without flexible, active frontal lobes, people become creatures of habit, and their relationships become superficial and routine. Invention and innovation, discovery and wonder, all are lacking. Our frontal lobes can also, sometimes, but not always, stop us from doing things that will embarrass us or hurt others. Yeah, tell that to the ADHD. We don't have to eat every time we're hungry, tip anybody who rouses our desire, or blow up every time we're angry. But it is exactly on that edge between impulse and acceptable behavior where most of our troubles begin. The more intense the visceral sensory input from the emotional brain, the less capacity the rational brain has to put a damper on. Hmm. Mhm. Don't think I'm gonna get through it all yet. All right. Well, I'm really tired. It's been a really long week. There's not really anybody here. So I think I'm going to go ahead. If there's anything that you'd like what I just said for trauma in general, recovery, cold, oh, absolutely, Luna. Appreciate you being here. And apparently I am capable of being consistent. And I have done several weeks of this on Saturdays at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. As long as life will allow it. So I hope you can join me next time. So is there anything else you wanted to talk about, Luna, before I get off? Um, Super. I love this book. It's like really, yeah, I agree. Understanding the basics like humanity and neurobiology of our responses to trauma, I think helps us feel like we're not looking for some of the things that's how we respond to trauma. And then also understanding how it happens to us can help us heal from it. And that's kind of where I'm at. I just heal from some of the trauma that I've been carrying around and decide what to do with the people, you know? Well, I'm so glad you're here. If you want to catch up on the beginning of the book, if you haven't read it before, I do have a playlist on YouTube, and I started some new guests. Started a couple of months, but had a kind of a gap for a while where I was be online, and then I'm so super glad we were able to be here and out soon. Hopefully we can get some more people to show up and we can have some life discussions, kind of support each other through our trauma work. That's my goal. Get a nice size group to stop actually. But with that, you gotta go do something, right? Focus on something that you can control. I get it. All right. Well, with that, oh yeah, that too, right? Um, I will focus on me, and as always, if somebody does not hold your step or ever, I am sorry. Thank you.